this edition of the Reminger Report Podcast on emerging technologies. I'm Zach Pyers, and here today I've got one of my colleagues, Marissa, who's going to talk to us about a case that's kind of a little bit different than what we're used to talking about here on the podcast, in that it's a criminal case, um, and it involves technology and the use of technology in kind of a different respect than what we're used to talking about. But Marissa, if you could, first of all, thanks for joining us. And if you could, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here. So my name is Marissa Kuryla. I'm an associate here in the Columbus Reminger office. I just started about a year and 2 months ago. So yeah.
And we're here today to talk about a criminal trial. Tell us about kind of what led up to this criminal trial, what the trial was about.
Yeah. So in about July of 2023, it's kind of a pretty unfortunate case. A 6-year-old disabled girl named Fajr Williams, who was in a wheelchair at the time. She was being loaded onto a school bus, and there was a mechanism on the school bus where they would load the wheelchair onto the school bus, and they would essentially harness her into this loading dock, and basically they would attach the wheelchair and then harness her in. But unfortunately, something went wrong, and she was actually strangled to death by her own wheelchair safety harness on her bus ride to school on that day. There was a bus aide on the school bus. Her name was Amanda Davila, and she was sitting on a one of the seats in front of Fajr. And she apparently failed to notice that Fajr had slumped down into her wheelchair, which caused one of her shoulder harnesses to cut off her airway. Miss Davila was then charged with aggravated manslaughter, reckless manslaughter, and endangerment of the welfare of the child.
Now, we saw this trial kind of play out. What did both the prosecution and the defense, for that matter, argue when this case was at trial?
So the prosecution, they argued that Miss Davila was distracted. She, first of all, was faced away from Fajr. She was texting and on social media instead of checking on Fajr at the time. And even Miss Davila testified in her own defense and admitted on the stand that she should have checked on Fajr, and that she didn't follow the proper training and safety procedures at the time, and that she made a mistake in not following those safety procedures. And then conversely, the defense argued that the family members didn't properly buckle Fajr into her wheelchair on that day. I believe Fajr's sister was the one that strapped her into her wheelchair. And there is part of the safety procedure. The family members are part of their duty is to properly get the child into the harness. So part of the defense was arguing that the family members didn't properly put her into the seat that day.
Now, one of the things that stood out to me and that you were talking about is really that the aide in the situation was on social media and was using her phone. And I'm trying to remember whether she had ear pods or headphones on during the trip or not. But one of the big charges that, as I understood it, and I think you alluded to this, was that she was distracted by the use of her own technology. Is that fair?
Yes, yeah, correct.
And and how did this, I mean, what did the jury do with this kind of testimony and frankly this kind of argument that I don't want to say she was texting while driving, because obviously she wasn't driving the bus, but it's a very similar kind of analogy to being distracted while you have a duty. How did the jury receive this?
So they agreed with that. I mean, they ended up finding or charging her with the lesser of the charges and finding her guilty of endangering the welfare of a child. And they agreed with the prosecution's argument that she should have been paying attention and not have been distracted by being on her phone. And although, it would have seemed that Farge was, properly secured, given, even though technology is seemingly safe and secure these days, you still have a duty to monitor the situation and make sure that nothing goes wrong. That's kind of what the jury um, found in this case.
Yep, we've obviously been talking about this from the criminal aspect, which is kind of unique for our podcast. Was there a civil component, to this unfortunate set of circumstances as well?
Yeah, so the child's parents, they also brought an insurance claim against Montauk Transit on behalf of their daughter's estate, which they settled for $5 million. So they did that, which was they settled before they brought a civil lawsuit.
And obviously, we've seen the use of technology now for a number of years. Do you see this type of distracted and failure to do your duty, whether it's distracted driving, distracted aids, distracted fill in the blank? Do you think we're going to start to see more of these claims being brought either from, the civil side, like you alluded to, or, you know, in the criminal aspect, as we saw in this case?
Yeah, I think that as technology advances, there may be more of a sense of security and safety that may make people think they don't need to monitor certain situations, like the one in this case. And because of this, it may make situations like these start to increase where people are failing to follow proper policies and procedures or make people become distracted because they trust whatever technology they're utilizing to properly do its job. But, as we've seen in cases like this, even a minor error or defect in a seemingly safe mechanism can mean the difference between life and death. And if you're distracted with, technology, with your phone or, just because you trust, some other technology to do its job, then that could mean increased lawsuits and you getting sued.
Marissa, I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate you kind of explaining this case to us and kind of bringing us up to speed on it. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. Well, happy to be here.